1 Samuel chapter 6. The Philistines send the ark back. After the ark of Adonai had been in the country of the Philistines 7 months, the Philistines summoned the priests and the diviners, saying, "What should we do with the ark of Adonai? Tell us how we should send it back to its place." So they said, "If you are going to send the ark of God of Israel back, do not send it empty, for you must surely return it with a guilt offering. Then you will be healed, and it will be revealed to you why his hand has not been removed from you." "What guilt offering should we return to him?" they asked. So they said, 5 golden tumors and 5 golden mice, according to the number of the lords of the Philistines, for 1 plague was on each of you and on your lords. So you will make images of your tumors and images of your mice that mar the land, and you must give glory to God, the God of Israel. Perhaps he will lighten his hand off you, your gods in your land. Why harden your hearts? The Egyptians and Pharaoh hardened their hearts. When he afflicted them, didn't they send him away, so they left? Now therefore he gets a new cart ready, 2 milk cows, on which there has never been a yoke. Hitch the cows to the cart and turn their calves home away from them. Then take the ark of Adonai and place it on the cart. Also put the golden objects that you returned to him as a guilt offering in a box by its side. Then send it off so it may go. Then watch. If it goes up by the way of its own territory to Beth Shemesh, then it was he who inflicted on us this great harm. But if not, then we will know that it was not his hand that struck us. So it just happens to us by chance." So the people did so. They took 2 milk cows and hitched them to the cart and shut up their calves at home. Then they placed the ark of Adonai on the cart together with the box, the golden mice, and the models of their tumors. So the cows took the way straight toward Beth Shemesh. They kept along the same highway, lowing as they went, and turned aside neither to the right nor to the left. The lords of the Philistines followed them to the border of Beth Shemesh. Now the people of Beth Shemesh were reaping their wheat harvests in the valley. When they lifted up their eyes and saw the ark, they rejoiced to see it. The ark came to the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh and stopped there, where there was a large stone. Then they chopped the wood of the ark and offered up the cows as a burnt offering to Adonai. The Levites took down the ark of Adonai and the box that was with it that contained the gold objects and placed them on the large stone. Then the people of Beth Shemesh offered burnt offerings and sacrifices to Adonai that day. Now when the 5 lords of the Philistines had seen it, they returned to Ekron that same day. So these are the golden tumors the Philistines returned as a guilt offering to Adonai: 1 for Ashdod, 1 for Gaza, 1 for Ashkelon, 1 for Gath, 1 for Ekron. The golden mice also corresponded to the number of all the cities of the Philistines belonging to the 5 lords, both the fortified cities and their country villages, as far as a large stone in which they had set down the ark of Adonai. It remains to this day in the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh. Then he struck down some of the men of Beth Shemesh because they had gazed into the ark of Adonai. He struck down the people, 70 out of 50,000 men. The people mourned because Adonai had struck the people at a great slaughter. So the men of Beth Shemesh asked, "Who is able to stand before Adonai, this holy God? To whom should it go up from us?" So they sent messengers to the inhabitants of Kiriath Jearim, saying, "The Philistines have brought us back the ark of Adonai. Come down, bring it up to you." 1 Samuel chapter 7, Samuel's victory at Mizpah. Then the men of Kiriath Jearim came and fetched up the ark of Adonai, brought it to the house of Abinadab on the hill, and consecrated Eleazar his son to guard the ark of Adonai. From that day the ark rested in Kiriath Jearim. It was a long time, 20 years, and the whole house of Israel yearned after Adonai. Then Samuel spoke to the whole house of Israel, saying, "If you are returning to Adonai with all your heart, then remove the foreign gods and the Ashtaroth from among you. Direct your hearts to Adonai and serve him only. Then he will deliver you from the hand of the Philistines." So Benaiah Thurel removed the Baalim and the Ashtaroth and served Adonai alone. Then Samuel said, "Gather all Israel to Mizpah, and I will pray to Adonai for you." So they gathered together the Mizpah, drew water, and poured it out before Adonai. They fasted on that day and said there, "We have sinned against you, against Adonai." Then Samuel was judging Benaiah Thurel at Mizpah. Now when the Philistines heard that Benaiah Thurel had assembled at Mizpah, the lords of the Philistines marched against Israel. When Benaiah Thurel heard it, they were afraid of the Philistines. So Benaiah Thurel said to Samuel, "Don't stop crying out to Adonai our God for us, so he may save us from the hand of the Philistines." Samuel took a nursing lamb and offered it as a whole burnt offering to Adonai. Then Samuel cried out to Adonai for Israel, and Adonai answered him. As Samuel was offering up the burnt offering, the Philistines drew near to the battle against Israel. But Adonai thundered with a loud thunder on that day against the Philistines and confused them, so that they were defeated before Israel. Then the men of Israel went out of Mizpah and pursued the Philistines, and struck them down all the way to below Bethkar. Then Samuel took a stone and set it between Mizpah and Shen, and named it Ebenezer, saying, Thus far Adonai has helped us. So the Philistines were subdued, and they did not invade the border of Israel anymore. The hand of Adonai was against the Philistines all the days of Samuel. The towns that the Philistines had taken from Israel, from Ekron to Gath, were restored to Israel, and Israel recovered its territory from the hand of the Philistines. There was also peace between Israel and the Amorites. Now Samuel judged Israel all the days of his life. He used to go annually on a circuit to Bethel and Gilgal and Mizpah, and would judge over Israel in all those places. Then his return was to Ramah, because his home was there, and from there he would judge Israel. So he built an altar to Adonai there. 1 Samuel chapter 8. Israel demands a king. Now when Samuel grew old, appointed his sons as judges over Israel. The name of the firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba, and his sons, however, did not walk in his ways, but turned aside after dishonest gain. They took bribes and perverted justice. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah, and said to him, Behold, you have grown old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint us for a king to judge us, like all the nations. But the matter was displeasing in Samuel's eyes when they said, Give us a king to judge us. So Samuel prayed to Adonai. Then Adonai said to Samuel, Listen to the voice of the people and all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, rather they have rejected me from being king over them, like all the deeds they have done since the day I brought them out of Egypt to this day, forsaking me and worshiping other gods. So they are doing to you also. So now, listen to their voice. However, you must earnestly forewarn them and declare to them the rulings of the king who will reign over them. Now Samuel reported to all the words of Adonai to the people who were asking him for a king. This will be the practice of the king that will reign over you, he said. He will draft your sons and assign them as charioteers and horsemen, and they will run before his chariots. He will appoint them as commanders of thousands and captains of 50s, and also some plow to his fields, reap his harvest, make his weapons of war, and the equipment for his chariots. Also he will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers. He will seize the best of your fields, vineyards, and olive groves, and give them to his courtiers. He will take a tenth of your grain and your vintage and give it to his officials and slaves. He will also take your male and female servants, your best young men, your donkeys, and make them do his work. He will also take the tenth of your flocks. Then you yourselves will become his slaves. When the day comes and you cry out because of your king whom you have chosen for yourself, Adonai will not answer you that day. But the people refused to listen to Samuel, and they said, No, but a king should be over us, so we may become like all the nations, having our king who will judge us go out before us and fight our battles. After Samuel heard all the words of the people, he reported them back to the hearing of Adonai. Adonai said to Samuel, Listen to their voice and appoint a king for Israel for them. So Samuel said to the men of Israel, Go, each one to his town.